Hi there, I'm Michelle the Painter from Berkshire Paint and Sip, and this is Paint and Sip at Home. Alright, so today I'm going to be painting Sunset Winter Lighthouse, and I'm sipping on my iced tea. And if you enjoy this process, I do hope that you like and subscribe to my channel, and that you also check out my Patreon page where you can find additional painting perks. So let's get painting and let's get sipping. Alright, so for my materials today, I'm going to be using a stretched and primed 16 by 20 inch canvas. If you're painting along with me, you can certainly switch up the size, but that's what I'll be using. I'm going to be using acrylic paint today. My colors are titanium white, burnt umber, which I will call brown, ultramarine blue, Mars black, green oxide, deep yellow, and fluorescent orange. And of course you can switch up those colors too if you'd like, but that's what I'll be using. For my tools today, I have a standard number 2 pencil that I'll use for an initial sketch, and then I have 3 brushes. I have a 1/2 inch wide flat bristle brush, I have a number 6 round synthetic brush, and I have a number 1 round synthetic brush, and I will refer to these as small, medium, and large as we go through the painting process. Of course you can switch those up as well. If you're painting along with me, you'll probably want to have a cup of water for washing your brushes, as well as a paper towel for drying your brushes. And down below this video, I will be providing you with a couple of additional resources that can help you through your painting process. One of them is a link where you can purchase the same exact paint kit that I'm using, from the large canvas to the same type of paint and brushes and all the good stuff in between. So that's down there for you. There's also a link where you can download a free image of the final painting. So you can print that and use it as visual reference as you go through the painting process. And there's also written step-by-step instructions down there for you as well. And that's all we're going to need today. Alright, so what we're going to do for the first step is we're going to draw ourselves a sketch of our landscape. So I'm going to be using my pencil. I'll give you a couple of markers and we'll just connect the markers, and by the time we're done we'll have our sky separated from our water, separated from our land. So on the right hand side I will be giving myself 2 markers. The first marker is going to be about 1/3 of the way up my canvas. So if this is about halfway up your canvas, and this is about halfway between there and the bottom, it's somewhere in the middle of there. So maybe about 5.5 inches or so. So that's going to be my first marker. Then I'm going to come down, I would say about 1.5 inches to 2 inches, and make myself another marker. So 2 markers on the right hand side. Then I'm going to make myself a marker that will be the left hand side. This top one is going to be our horizon line. So I can use my pencil or one of my brushes or something as a measuring tool to see how high I made this top marker. You can measure it with your finger, and then I'm going to come, if this is about halfway in my canvas, I'm going to be about 3 inches to the left of that and give myself another marker at about the same height that I had this one over here. I'm going to make one more marker. It's going to be on the left hand side. It's going to be about halfway up my canvas, so somewhere in through here, maybe a little bit lower than halfway, but somewhere in that vicinity. So I am going to connect these two, and it doesn't have to be a super straight line, but look, what I like to do is just kind of keep my eye on the prize, which is the other marker. You could certainly whip out a ruler or anything of that nature. You'll be able to clean up this line as we are painting. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect this marker to here, and I'm going to cross over, and it's going to kind of come meet this one as well. So this is going to be my land line, so this can be bumpy. This is going to have where my lighthouse is going to sit over and through here, so just give yourself some kind of fun uneven type of line in through there. And that is all we're going to be doing for our outline. So we'll be using our large brush for the next step, so you can put your pencil away, take out your large brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to be painting our sky. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush. The colors that I'm going to be using are black, brown, blue, white, orange, and yellow. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to make the top of my sky kind of dark, but it doesn't have to be super dark. It's going to be a sunset type of landscape, so to me the sky would be a little bit darker at the top. And then I'm going to fade it down to a light type of blue down in through here, and then as I get down towards the sun or towards the horizon, that's when I'll start incorporating my sunset colors. So I'm going to start with black, blue, and brown on my brush at the same time. Just to get the top part started, I'm going to introduce white really quickly, but I'm really just going to kind of get this darkness on up in through here. Then I'm going to pick up white and blue. So white and blue is where I'm going next. I'm going to be using a left to right crisscross type of brush stroke, so that way it ends up kind of emulating light clouds going by. You could certainly have a smooth sky as you're transitioning down towards the bottom, but if you want it to look like there's some light floaty clouds, feel free to utilize this type of brush stroke. And as I'm working my way down, I just picked up blue and white to start to work off some of the darker tones of the black and the brown, and I'm still just picking up blue and white as I'm coming down my sky. In a minute, I'm going to stop picking up my white or the blue, and I'll just be picking up white. But right now I'm still just picking up blue and white, getting the darker tones to kind of work their way off of my brush. And you can certainly, again, make yours as light or as dark as you want, just picking up more white with a touch of blue. And then probably my next time I go to reload my brush, it'll be with just white. So just picked up white on my dirty brush. I'm not washing my brush throughout this process because I want these colors to really talk to each other and to look like they're working their way into each other, letting that darkness kind of release from my brush, which will allow it to look really nice and natural. And you'll see as I go through this process, sometimes I go back up and manipulate that paint a little bit more as it's going through its drying process. Still just picking up white as I'm coming down this sky. I'm going to bring this white pretty far down before I start utilizing the sunset colors. You may find if you still have a ton of blue or a ton of those darker colors still on your brush, you might want to opt to wash your brush at this point. But if, like mine is nice and faint, it's not too invasive at this point, so I'm going to just let happen what's going to happen. So I'm going to start picking up some orange paint right now. I'm going for my orange before my yellow because if I do have blue on my brush, the orange and the blue will make like a purpley color, whereas if I went yellow and still had blue on my brush, I could end up with a big green sky. So I'm going to err on the side of caution and pick up orange first. And then once I'm comfortable, I'll start picking up some yellow as well. But I'm going to bring this right to that horizon line. You can even bump into your pencil mark. That's going to allow for a nice, easy way to transition into the water. And I'm just going to kind of push my brush a little bit harder into my canvas now. Make sure I get all of that, or a good amount of those remnants of the other colors off of it. And now I'm going to start picking up maybe orange, yellow, and white all at the same time on my brush. This is going to allow for a very pretty transition into the yellows. I'm going to pick up some yellow and white now. And of course, your sunset colors can really transition as vibrant as you want or as subtle as you want. It can really resemble many different types of sunset, so don't feel like your color placement has to be exactly where mine is. You might feel that you want more of that orange, like I feel like I want a little bit more of the orange, so I just put orange and white on my brush and I'm just kind of adding more and more into this sky, and I'm just loosely just blending them in together and getting them to transition up into that lighter region of the sky, so it really looks like it's like just sinking and fading into the Earth's horizon. And then when you feel like you've got this all nice and accomplished, what I like to do is at the bottom of the horizon, I'm actually going to, before I say I'm done, I'm going to pick up a tiny bit more blue while my horizon or my paint is still wet down here. We're going to put the sun on later, but I like to put a little bit of this blue in here to make it look like we have really low-lying kind of clouds right at the horizon. And just a little bit rubbed in will give you that distant look of low-lying atmospheric dimension down at the bottom of the horizon. And then we are going to be using the same brush for the next step. So once you've got your sky done, you can make any little tweaks and adjustments that you want, and then you can just wash it and dry it and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're painting our water. So that's going to be just this little sliver in through here. It's going to emulate the colors that are in the sky, but I don't want to go overboard with the detail on it because it's really just kind of background noise. We are going to be having our sun setting in through here, and we'll have a little bit, or somewhere around here, we'll have the reflection of the sunset on the water later as well. But right now I'm just kind of filling in the space to tell people that this is the water. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start the top of the water. I'm going to be using blue and brown, and then as I come down into the base of the water, I'll be using more white, and then I'll just incorporate a little bit of those sunset colors. So I'm going to start with brown and blue on my large brush, and I don't need it to be a super firm, crisp line, but if you want yours to be, you can certainly do that. So I can still see my pencil underneath, and I'm just kind of rubbing my brush back and forth in kind of a continual motion just to kind of get that color on there. And again, I don't really need to do too much, just kind of making sure that it goes all the way up to the sky and that I don't have any unpainted canvas between my sky and my water. And you're going to have a lot of stuff in the foreground that's going to distract or take away from the need for your horizon line to be perfect. So if your horizon line isn't perfect, don't worry about it. I just picked up some blue and white just to get some additional colors on here, get that to blend in a little bit. In a second, I'll pick up a little bit of my sunset colors, a little bit more white, and I'm bumping into my land line at this point just because I want to make sure that I've got the paint all the way to that marker. And now I think I'm going to pick up a white with a little bit of orange and yellow on my brush, and I'm just going to sprinkle in just a little bit here and there, not much, just a little bit to make sure it reads as reflective water that is adorning this space on our canvas. And then we're going to utilize the same brush for the next step. So once you've got your water on, you can wash and dry this large brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're putting on the snow on our land in through here. So I want my land to have some lumps and bumps and look really natural and have a lot of places that look like they're elevated. I want this area in through here to look like it's the highest, which will clearly be done by our lighthouse that we're going to put on. But how I'm going to do this is I'm going to have it a little bit lighter, my snow and stuff, on this particular little hill. I'm going to have a kind of a dark spot in through here, and then I'll have it lighter in through here, and then very light at the edges where it's facing the sunset. So I'm going to be using black, brown, blue, and white, and I'm going to be most of the time using this circular type of brush stroke. I wouldn't be terribly concerned about it ending up perfect at this point because we can do little adjustments as we go through the rest of the painting process, but this is really intended to give you a nice base coat with some light spots and some dark spots to make this snow look like it's predominantly in the shadows. So I'm going to start with all four colors on my brush at the same time. So I have brown, blue, a little bit of black. I don't need a ton of black. Sometimes that will overpower the equation, and some white. And I'm just going to start with some circles in through here. I know that I want this area kind of to be on the darker side, so it will allude to this being a hill that goes upwards. So I'm going to just kind of start in through here as I work my way towards the edge of this, I just picked up a little bit more white on my brush, and I'm going to get these areas to really look like they belong together. Just going to give a lot of circular motion. Sometimes when I do this, I will let off on my pressure, so I'm not really super scrubbing the canvas. And if I let off on the pressure, what will happen is I will allow for a smoother texture or a smoother blend to happen as that paint is drying. And I don't need it again to be all one color, so I'm allowing for some bright spots and dark spots. I definitely want the edge of my snow over here to be pretty darn light, so I just picked up a more white paint on my brush to get that area nice and light along that edge. We're going to be adding a reflection of sorts from, or a highlight of sorts from the sunset that we're going to be putting on in a little while, so that will help these edges to become more alive. I'm reloading my brush with brown, blue, a tiny bit of black, and some white to get a little bit more dark snow down at the bottom, back in through here. I'm going to have a lot of trees on here that are going to provide me with a bunch of different information on my snow, but you can see I'm allowing for there to be different tones and shades throughout my snow. Some is really dark, some is a little dirty looking, but to me it just looks like it's in the shadows. I've got the edge nice and light in through here, and then over in this direction it almost doesn't matter what happens here because you're going to have a bunch of trees over on this side that are going to take up the majority of this area anyway, so I just want to get some sort of semblance of a snow type color in through there. Maybe pop on just a little bit more lightness or something in through here, make it look like we've got a little bit more information on this particular area in through here. And then we are going to be utilizing our medium brush for the next step. So once you've got your snow laid out on your land, you can put this large brush away. Just make sure it goes all the way up to your pencil, like you can't see your pencil outline anymore. So you can put this large brush away, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're painting the base coat of our lighthouse. I'm going to be using my medium brush. The colors that I'm going to be using are white, brown, and black. I do want to forewarn you that before you start this step that you do want to have the area where you're going to be putting your lighthouse to be dry. So mine's going to be going in this area over here. So this is that time where you get to take that extra long break if you'd like to. Or you can, you know, find some kind of fun fanning method to get it dry, or you can do as I did and just whip out a blow dryer and get it dry that way. So how I'm going to do this, I'm going to have a really tall, narrow, imposing kind of great lighthouse on mine. You can have yours short, you can have yours with different buildings along the edges. I'm just going to go for a simple, tall, slender one. So we're going to do the base of it, which will not include the little decorative top where the actual light is. We're just going to be doing the main base. So how I'm going to do this, I'm going to first put a little bit of white and a touch of brown on my brush. Not a lot of brown, but more white than brown. I'm going to give myself a couple of markers. I will connect those markers and then we'll fill it in and we'll magically have a cool shape by the time we're done. So I'm going to have the base of mine somewhere in this vicinity of my hill. So I'm going a little bit lower than the top of my hill, maybe by about an inch or so, and then I'm going to have it in this vicinity. So I'm going to make myself 2 dots that are of equal height, and they're about, I would say, 1.5 inches or so away from each other. Yours could certainly be skinnier or a wider, whatever works for you. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to eyeball where the center of that is, and I'm going to go straight up from there. So I'm just going to kind of travel straight up, 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 up until I'm about, I would say, maybe 3.5 inches away from the top of my canvas. And if you want to make sure that you're in the center of here, you can always measure it. So you can measure to the center with your brush and just go up to however high you want it. Make sure that you're in the center. That's going to prevent you from having a leaning, lighthouse. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make myself a small, about half the distance of whatever you did at the bottom. you're going to make yourself a small horizontal line. So mine's going to be maybe about 3/4 of an inch wide, something like that. That straddles over that center point. And then I'm just going to connect the left to the left and the right to the right. And it doesn't have to be perfectly straight. You will definitely be able to modify it as you're painting. If you do need yours to be perfectly straight, you could certainly use a ruler or masking tape or something that will allow you to get nice perfect edges. And once you've got that shape on there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be painting it in a vertical brush stroke. I'm going to go for the right side to be lighter than the left side. So as I'm painting, I'm going to start on the right side with just white paint on my brush, and I'm going to give myself these long vertical stripes, or paint strokes, and going all the way to the edge. And your lighthouse will most likely change shape a little bit. If you want your edges to be more straight, I like to brace my hand on my canvas, so you can do it that way. Then I'm going to pick up brown and white on my brush at the same time as I'm going towards the left side of the lighthouse, bringing it all the way up to the top of the lighthouse, and I just kind of keep blending them up and down until I get a nice blend going. And then on that far left hand side, I'm going to be using brown, white, and I'll also have black on my brush. So I pick up the same color combination, white, brown, and then in addition a tiny bit of black, and I'm going to do the left side with that color combination. So just kind of going right over my original line that I had, slowing down a little bit so I can make sure it's kind of straight. It doesn't have to be perfectly straight. Trust me when I say all the other elements that we're going to have in the painting will help to distract the viewer from imperfect lines. And mine even grew a little bit. So don't worry if yours grows or changes shape a little bit. And then I'm just going to paint it in with this vertical paint stroke and getting it to blend in a little bit with that midsection. And then I just kind of keep going up and down. If I feel like I need to add more paint or wipe my brush off like I just did, I just wiped my brush off on my paper towel, and then I just keep going up and down until I feel like I've got a nice blend going. And then we are going to be utilizing our small brush for the next step. So once you've got this base coat on here, you can put this medium brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. Alright, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to paint our sun and its reflection. So I'm going to be using my small brush. I will be using white, yellow, and orange. And if I feel that I need to go into any other colors, I certainly will, but that's where I'm going to start. So I'm going to have mine a little bit to the right of the center of my canvas. So if this is about halfway into my canvas, left to right, I'm about an inch over to the right of that. I'm going to start with just white paint on my brush, and I'm going to give myself the center of the sun. The trick to this, or at least my trick, is I do not use a lot of paint on my brush because I want this paint to kind of dry on the fly so I can adjust the values or add more glow to it or whatever on the fly. If I use a ton of paint, then it won't dry really fast for me, and I end up working a little bit harder to accomplish what I want. So I've got the center of it. Mine is really small, like the size of a peanut, and then I'm going to kind of just soften my edges a little bit with the remnants on my brush. Once I've got that on there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of that white or lightness in my water. So directly below my sun, I'm going to just use this left to right kind of zigzag type of look. You can make it come directly towards the viewer, but I do find that when we're painting, if we're not 100% certain on our perspective, sometimes if you go straight down to the center, it might look a little unnatural, but so I like to go at a diagonal sometimes. So I'm doing mine at a diagonal. Once I've got that done, I'm going to not wash my brush. I'm picking up a tiny bit of yellow paint, and what I'm doing is I'm enhancing the exterior glow of my sun with a little bit of vibrant yellow. So that little bit of additional contrast around the edges of the sun is going to make it glow even more. So then I'm going to pick up a little bit of yellow and put it on the edges of my reflection in the water. So again, just that left to right kind of zigzaggy type motion. I've got it bigger or wider up at the top, and then it narrows into a smaller reflection as it goes farther away. Now I'm picking up, without washing my without washing my brush, a little bit of orange, again just to kind of make sure that I've got some great contrast around the edges of that sun. I think I'm going to pick up a little bit more of the orange. I think I want this to be even more vibrant as it is nearing the horizon line in through here. I've got a bit of a frog in my voice right now. I might have to take an extra sip in between a step here, but we'll try and muscle through it here. So just adding a little bit more of that orange left to right over in through here. And if you want, you can add a tiny bit of water onto your brush just to get that to dissipate out so it doesn't look too firm of a line. I'm picking up more of that orange to put it down the edges of my reflection in the water. So something like this. And you can have yours very vibrant and very in your face, beautiful tones and, you know, nice, exciting, intensities to it, or you can have it subtle. So whatever really works for you. I'm washing and drying my brush right now, and before I call it done, I'm going to pop a little bit more white into the center of the sun. So I just washed and dried my brush, and I'm enhancing this even more. So because I did a nice thin layer to start, it dried for me really fast, which allows me to just come back really quickly and put another layer on it. And I'm going to do the same thing in the water itself, just kind of amping up this little white part for myself. And then you can fiddle with yours all you want, make any little tweaks and adjustments. And once you feel that you've got it in the intensity that you want, we will be utilizing, we are going to be utilizing our large brush for the next step. So once you've got your sun setting here, you can put your small brush away, take out your large brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're doing the base coat for all of our trees and any little bushes and stuff you might want to incorporate. So I'm going to be using my large brush. The colors that I'm going to be using are black and green. And how I'm going to do this is I like to kind of plan out where my trees are going, and I put what I refer to as place markers in place in order to kind of plan it out, and then I'll put all my branches and stuff of that nature. So I'm going to be using green and black on my brush. I'll start with both colors on my brush, and then every time I go to reload my brush, I'm just going to keep alternating those colors. So that way, in the variety of the colors on the tree, they'll have different tones of the darkness of the green and stuff of that nature. So it'll make it look a little bit more natural. So I'm going to load my brush with black and green, about equal parts. It doesn't really matter. We're just doing the place markers to start. And I want my brush to be a little bit in control. So what I'm going to do is I take it and I squish it in the paint on the side of my palette. So that brings my bristles together in this direction. I'm going to have a couple of tall trees over here. I'm going to have the tops of some trees coming off the bottom of my canvas, and then I'm going to have a couple of trees over on this little hill with maybe a couple of little bushes and stuff. So I'm going to start over on the right hand side. My first tree is going to be about as tall as this in through here. So I'm going to just kind of come over maybe about 2 inches or so away from the edge of my canvas, and I'm really just giving myself a vertical line. I'm going to have these stopping about halfway down the land on this particular side. I'm going to do another one about half the distance between here and here, and it's going to go up maybe, I don't know, maybe 3 inches up past my horizon line, something like that. Then I'm going to do a couple down in through here. Maybe one is going to be almost up to the top of my land, just bringing that down like that. I'll have one over in this direction, maybe a little bit shorter than that one. Going to come over in through here. These ones are all going to go down to the bottom of my canvas, these ones that I do over here. I'll have one, I would say, maybe somewhere in this direction, and then maybe one somewhere around here, and then I'll do a couple up behind my my lighthouse here. So maybe this one's gonna go somewhere in, we'll put this one right about here, and then I'll have another one that's a little bit taller, something like that. So once I've got them in place, now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna be utilizing that black and green to make the branches of these. So I'm trying to emulate a loose interpretation of winter pine trees, which for the most part are in a triangular type of formation. So I'm going to be, and some of these trees will cross over one another, their leaves and stuff will be in front of the other ones. So I'm going to start back with that green and black on my brush, and what I like to do is I'm going to be dotting from the inside of that tree with the corner of my brush, and you can have longer ones and shorter ones, and they can come out at different angles, but you definitely want to make sure that you hide the majority of that trunk or that center part of the tree, so that way it doesn't, I think what happens sometimes is we leave a little bit too much of that trunk showing, and it ends up not looking as natural as it potentially could. So I just keep reloading my brush with the green and the black, making sure that I've got these coming out in different directions. They don't all have to be really systematic. I like having them coming out with a little bit of movement and wiggle, and you know, reloading my brush with black and then with green, and that's going to help me to get that good variety of lightnesses and darknesses throughout that tree. I'm going to go ahead and move on to my next one in through here. So just a little bit of the green and the black will help me to accomplish this, bringing it all the way down to the bottom. And if you come to a point where they're going to start to overlap one another, that's totally cool. Just roll with it. We can get that to separate a little bit when we go to do the snow later, but you can certainly just let it happen, let them overlap. You can have little peekaboo spots inside the tree where you can see the ocean behind it or the water behind it. And then I'm going to go ahead and just work on these ones over here. So again, I'm going to move my canvas just a little bit so I can reach the bottom of it. So just making sure that it has that pointy top, which is going to give it the iconic look of the pine trees, and then trying to give these uneven type of branches coming out. You could have a rogue one that almost like goes in an upward direction, so know that it doesn't have to be exactly as mine is, and of course you can make yours lighter or darker. We are going to be putting snow on them later, so if you end up with branches that you're like, that just didn't work out for me, don't worry, we get to hide a lot with snow later. So that's a wonderful thing about doing these great winter scenes, is we have that element of disguise later on when we're putting those other things on. And again, if yours start to overlap, that's awesome. That just adds to the natural state of forests, because they often just, everything kind of touches each other, and it lives together and it intermingles together. I'm going to do these last two up here, and then I think I'm going to put some little bushes around the edges of the bottom edge of my lighthouse too. So just kind of getting these in through here, giving myself that little bit of a wider bottom so it resembles the pine tree. This one's going to just go right off my canvas, so I'm not even really concerned about what happens to that one. So that looks pretty good. And then I'm going to go ahead and put some stuff down at the bottom of my lighthouse in through here. And of course, you can make yours into whatever type of formation that you want. If you found that the bottom of your tree needed a lot of hiding, you can put lots of bushes down there. So you can really just have some fun with whatever you want to do at the base. Maybe you have little bushes in here or whatever. So once you've got that all done, we are going to be switching to our small brush for the next step, so you can just get ready. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to be painting the details on our lighthouse. So I'm going to be using my small brush. The colors that I'm using are black, white, yellow, and orange. And if I use any other colors, I'll let you know. But how I'm going to do this is I'm going to start with all my black details, and then we'll add all the other stuff on top of that. So I'm going to be using my small brush, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to water down some of my black paint so it's almost like an ink consistency. So I am adding drops of water into my black paint so it can be of a nice fluid consistency so I can get some nice clean lines to it. So that's thinned out pretty well. And then what I like to do is I take my brush and I spin it on the side of my palette so the point of my brush becomes very pointy and I can control it. So what I'm first going to do is I'm making some stripes on my lighthouse, and I want to give the viewer the illusion that this lighthouse is round, so I'm going to have my stripes in a curved manner. So I'm going to start up at the top and through here, and I'm going to make them pretty narrow, and then maybe the top one is the most narrow. I'm only doing 3, and as I come down, I might make it a little bit wider. You could certainly mark yours out if you wanted to, but I'm going to start at the top and through here, and then just give myself a little curve like that. I will be widening them in a minute, but right now I just am going to try and get them all in place so I have a starting point, something like that. And something like that. So now that I've got them in place, now what I'm going to do, I keep getting my hand in some wet paint, so I'm going to try to stop doing that first. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to make them as wide as I want. So I'm going to utilize the width of my brush and just kind of push it in a little bit firmer, and that's going to allow me to get a little bit wider of a line. I'm bringing it all the way to the edge, and if you don't get your edges perfect, don't worry, because we do have another step that is going to help clean up those edges. So don't feel the pressure of, you know, making it super perfect. And if your curves are not perfect either, everything's okay. It doesn't need to be perfect. You can certainly go with the thought that, you know, maybe somebody hand painted these markings on this lighthouse, so maybe they are imperfect in reality. So you can, you know, utilize your creative thoughts to make it okay if it's not perfect. And I just went outside my lines, which I'm going to be okay with, because I know that I'm going to have a step where I can clean that up in a minute. So just making sure that I've got this as far down as I wanted. And I suppose you could certainly use your pencil to pencil these out before you go for it. But that's looking pretty all right to me in my painterly eye. Maybe just a little more adjustment on this one. There, that works. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to give myself a little window. I'm going to have just a little rectangle for my window somewhere in this vicinity. You could have many windows. You could even put a door down at the bottom of the lighthouse. But in my head, I've got my door on the other side of the lighthouse, so I don't have to paint it. But you could certainly put yours on the front side if you wanted to, or on this side if you wanted to. So just doing a little rectangle for my window. Then at the top of my lighthouse, I'm going to do like a little lookout area. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of outline the top of my lighthouse, but I'm going to overhang it just a little bit on the left and the right, and I'm going to make it into a little bit of a curved line. So again, that adds to the illusion of this object that we're painted being rounded. So I just overhung it by maybe an eighth to a quarter of an inch. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do 2 vertical lines that are going to be extended from the corners of the main structure, and they're going to go up about halfway between here and the top of my canvas. So just making myself 2 vertical lines. They can even be a little bit at an angle if you want them to emulate the direction of the actual structure itself, or you can, you know, this is a lighthouse that I created in my head, so you can certainly utilize any design elements that you want to make yours into your own. About halfway up those vertical lines, I'm going to do another horizontal line like this. I'm going to color this whole section in with black paint, as if this is like the room above the lighthouse. That is where the light fixture is housed or something. Then I'm going to do a little railing of sorts. So I'm going to bring this out like this at a similar angle as the one on the bottom, like this, and give myself 2 vertical lines here, 1, 2, and then over here, 1, 2. I'm going to put a topper on top of my, I might have just kicked the camera a little bit, so if it shook, that was my foot. So I'm going to put a little topper on the top. Going to use, overhang these 2 vertical lines by just a little bit, so something like this. I'm going to do a short triangle of sorts for this little topper like this, color it in with black paint, and then I'm going to do a beacon of sorts up at the top, just a long vertical line like that with a little ball on the top. So now that I've got that on there, I'm going to put white and brown paint on my brush. I did not wash my brush. I just picked up some white and brown. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put little highlights on this whole structure up in through here so it gives it a little bit of dimension. So I have white and brown. I'm going to go on this top rail, if I can keep my hand out of the way here, just with a little thin line, something like that. And then I'm going to give that little bit of a highlight on the right side of these posts. So a little bit of white and brown, making sure my brush is in control right now. White and brown. And then what I'm doing right now is I'm going to create the illusion of more of these posts in the middle of this whole lookout area. So even though I didn't paint them initially, right now I'm creating them by just adding that little bit of a light line in through there. I'm going to put a tiny bit of a highlight on the top portion as well, something like this. And just a little bit of white and brown is doing it for me. I don't need much. This is not intended to have tons of detail. I just want there to be something so when so it looks a little bit three-dimensional to me. So now that I've done that, I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I'm going to put a black line down the left-hand side of the lighthouse. This is going to close off this side, put it fully in the shadow, and then if I can, I'll blend it into the main structure a little bit. So I washed and dried my brush. I put black paint on it, and now I'm going down this entire left-hand side with black paint on my brush. So again, this is going to allow me to clean up any of the edges if I need to, and also add a bit of a shadow over on this left-hand side. So a little bit of that, and then I put some water on my brush. So the water is going to allow me to just get it to blend in a little bit with the main structure. So I'm just kind of wetting that black paint on my brush and getting it to blend in with the main structure in through here. So you don't need it to blend very much, but if you can get it to blend a little bit, that's awesome. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to put a highlight on this right side. So you can wash and dry your brush, pick up a little bit of white paint, and that's going to allow you to clean up the right hand side. And if there's any of these little edges that were popping out on you where it hit the black, that's going to help you to clean that up as well. And you might need a couple of layers if you had a trouble spot like I did that went out a little bit farther than I wanted it to, but just a little bit of white. And then you can do the same thing with a touch of water on your brush with that white, and you can even overlap it a little bit into that black area. That'll help to, as long as your black area isn't still wet, you can that'll allow this whole area to look like it is a little bit in a highlight. You can also add a little bit of a molding at the bottom of this little window if you wanted to, or at the top, wherever if you felt that you wanted to enclose that with a little bit of a molding, that's fantastic. Then I'm going to work on the little light inside. So this I'm going to be doing with mostly just white and yellow. So I just picked up a little bit of white paint on my brush. I'm going to give myself a little bit of that light in the center, and then I'm just going to kind of pull it out in these streaks. If your paint does not pull as fluidly as mine does, you can certainly add a little bit of water to your brush. That will allow you to just kind of pull it out in any which direction that you want. Once you've got it you know, coming out as far as you want, I'm going to add a touch of white and yellow to my brush to enhance some of these beams coming out, especially on the sides. That allows me to give it that more luminescent look with the yellow involved. And I'm going right over my whole structure. This will allow it to look really nice and bright and have a lot of luminescent value to it. And then I'm going to reload my brush with white and enhance the center of that light. So just enhance the center of that light like this. And then we're going to do one last little thing on the side of it. So I'm just going to get this light going in through here, and I'm going to add a highlight from my sunset. So I'm going to just wipe my brush off on my paper towel, adding a little bit of my orange plus water on my brush, and I'm going to give myself a little highlight or reflection of sorts of that sunset on this side of my building. You don't necessarily need to do this orangey portion of it, but it will add quite the illusion. We're going to do it on our trees as well. So if you want to add it, awesome. If not, no worries. And a little bit of water will help you to get it almost nice and translucent so you can see all the stuff underneath it. And then you can fiddle with that as much as you want. We are going to be utilizing our large brush for the next step. So once you've got your lighthouse done, you can put your small brush away, take out your large brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are painting the snow on our trees and our bushes. So I'm going to use my large brush. The colors that I'm going to be using are black, white, blue, and I might use a little brown too, but if I do, I'll let you know. So what I'm in essence going to do, I want this snow, the majority of it, to look like it's in the shadows because the sun is over there, so we as the viewer are on the other side of that light source. So we're on the back side of these trees, so they would in essence be kind of shadowed. And for me, when I look at snow that's in the shadow, it kind of looks grayish, bluish type of a color. So that's what I'm going to be going for. But you don't need just one shade of this grayish, bluish, smoky kind of color. You can certainly make a couple of different ones, and I will most likely kind of mix and match as I go along, so it's not just one solid tone. But what I'm going to do is I am going to be taking some of my black, some of my blue, and a little bit of white. You don't need a lot of white in there. And then just kind of pre-mixing myself this like medium kind of smoky blue type of color. So it's gray with a little bit of blue in it, and that's going to give me this shadowy type of tone for the snow. So as I go about doing this, I'm going to be using that same type of dotting technique, but I don't want to cover up all of what I've already done. So as I go through these trees, I'm thinking, okay, well, this is snow that's in the shadows. It's going to be this grayish kind of color. I want to represent it on my tree, but I don't necessarily want to take up the whole tree, so I'm going to be using it sporadically. You can also, as you're going through this process, you can pick up some of this with a little bit of white if you want there to be maybe a little bit more lightness over on the edges of one. I'm going to be, after I get this all on, I will go back and put brighter white stuff along the edges of the trees. But as I'm going through this process of just putting the shadowed snow on there, I might find that I want, some areas to be a little bit lighter, and I can add a touch of white on my brush during this process. So I've got this bluish gray, and again, conversely, you could also pick up a little bit of blue on your brush. So maybe one tree looks a little bit like it's got a little bit different tone to it. When I go to put the lightness on the edges of the tree from the snow, from the brighter snow, I'll be able to separate these two trees a little bit more, but right now we're just kind of letting them live together, something like that. I'm going to go ahead and keep applying this shadowy snow over into these trees over here, and you want to make sure that you have some of it hang over the edges. You don't just want to put this down the center, so you want it to definitely intermingle. I feel like this might be a little bit too similar to the value of this stuff back here, so I'm going to add maybe a little bit more darkness to it so I can see it along the edges. And again, you can add more lightness or darkness, whatever is visually working for you, and that's where the different tones of that same type of color are going to work well and play out in a nice natural way. So again, just adding my shadowed snow color onto my trees in a similar dotting process that I did for the first layer, only I am not painting the whole tree. I am leaving some of that green and black to show through on the in little peekaboo kind of spots. I'll do the same thing. Oh, this tree just got a little bit taller. I'm going to do the same thing over in through here, and then maybe a little bit on this tree in through here. Do a little bit on my bushes, so it looks like we've got some snow piled up on those. Bring some of that in through here, and again, you can see I'm not doing the whole thing. Now that I've got it on there, what I'm going to do, without washing my brush, I'm going to be picking up some white paint on the edge of my brush. So I have a lot of that bluish gray color within my bristles, and I'm going to be putting a lot of the white snow on the edges, because again, that's where the light source is going to be seeing it the most. I'm using just the corner of my brush, giving myself these little tips of the white snow that has just kind of accumulated over on the edges, and maybe your tree grows a little bit more. And I'm not bringing it too far around this back side, just a little bit. I'll do a little bit over here just so I can separate these two trees a little bit. I'll bring some over here on the left-hand side, and you can see as soon as I start popping a little bit of this brightness on these edges, how the trees really start to pop out and really take on that wintry look to them. And of course, you can put little pieces of that brighter snow along the back edge too, if you wanted to. If you felt like, you know, something, a little sparkle might happen on the back side, you could certainly do that. And then if you ever get to a point where you feel like your brush is overloaded, like I feel like I'm kind of out of control with my brush right now, I'm just going to give it a good squeeze in my paper towel, because what was happening was too much paint was being clogged in my bristles, and my bristles were splaying too much on me. So I just gave it a good squeeze in my paper towel, reloaded myself with some of my white, and this is going to give me back my control that I want. And of course, you can pick up some of that blue too, or the grayish blue if you wanted to, just to kind of give yourself that diversity in the appearance of the snow along the edges. And these to me are, you know, again, are representing pine trees. So I like the fact that everything looks kind of like it's droopy and kind of down at an angle, but you could certainly make yours into be whatever type of tree that you want. Maybe you've got just some like maple kind of trees with just branches, or, you know, have fun with whatever style of tree that you want yours to be. These ones are going to have a little bit of white over here. And when we go to do the highlight from the sun setting on these, a lot of these little white tips are going to turn beautiful colors. So this is a great, because they have the white underneath them, so this is a fabulous step to do this. So fiddle with yours all you want. If you want any more snow on the backside or anywhere else, feel free to do so. We are going to be utilizing this same brush for the next step. So once you've got your beautiful snow on your trees, you can wash and dry this large brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're painting shadows and highlights on our land and our trees. So when I say highlights, I'm thinking highlights are going to be coming from our sun-setting glowy colors, and the shadows are also coming from our sun setting. So my shadows, in essence, wherever my light source is going to be behind that object in that direction. So if my light source is here, my shadows from these trees would come down to the right hand side. I wouldn't have any shadows on here because I can't see the ground, and then anything up in this vicinity is going to be to the left. So my shadows, I just want to make a darker surface on the ground. It doesn't need to be black, so it's just going to be a darker version of snow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a little bit of black paint and my tree snow color, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to rub it into my ground, something like this, being mindful of where that light source is. So I'm going to go up underneath this tree a little bit and bringing this down at a diagonal, and just going to rough up the edges a little bit so it ends up looking like maybe it's the shadow of the edges of that tree. You can put straight black right underneath the tree, but what I'm doing first is I'm just going to give myself a little bit of this snow type of appearance in through here without it being a solid black color, and then you can pick up a little bit of black and maybe get it right up into the little crevices underneath that tree. So this will help you to make the bottom of the tree not look super straight and that you painted around it. This will help you to get those little edges of the tree. And if you needed to, you could certainly come back with some more tips of the edge of the tree, so you could pick up a little bit more of your snow color, maybe a little bit of white or whatever, just to get those little edges of the tree if you needed to put them back. But I think I'm doing all right on mine, so I'll just leave mine the way that it is. But if you needed to do yours, you certainly could. And then I'm gonna, with that darkness on my brush, I'm gonna give myself some little shadows along here, along the snow area in through here, just so I have some sort of base to these areas where I feel that there would be a little bit of shadow. I'm going to pick up some of that dark or the smoky blue that we had for the snow on the trees. And if you feel you want to, you can pick up a little bit more white. I just picked up a little bit more white just to make sure that this looks nice and natural, and just giving myself some nice diversity in those shadows. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to wash and dry. Once I feel that I've got this on here pretty good, I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I have to bend over for a second because I've dropped my paper towel. So give me a second here while I get my paper towel. Okay, got my paper towel back. So I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I'm going to put a highlight of my sunsetting colors on my snow, on my ground area, and in my trees. So I washed and dried my brush. This is going to be a you don't need a lot of paint step, so just giving it a good squeeze in my paper towel. I'm going to pick up a teeny tiny bit of my orange paint, just a itty bitty bit. You can even wipe it off on the side of your palette, and I'm going to rub it in my snow along the edge. You certainly could put a little bit of yellow as well, so that's going to be your judgment call if you want. I think actually I do want a tiny bit of yellow and a little bit of white, so I put a little yellow and white on my snow. Yeah, that looks pretty to me. Sometimes you just got to play with it a little bit until it is what you feel you want it to be. So you can just kind of play with the tones of orange, yellow, and white along the edge of your snow in through here, and you can bring it back as much as you want, because this is the area that would be seen by that. You could certainly put a little bit up and through there. And then I'm going to put some on the edges of the tree that are towards the sunset. So I'm picking up some orange paint. Now, I know that this is really translucent, which means you can see through it. So theoretically, I should be able to just kind of rub this on top of my snow. But if your snow is still a little bit wet, you can certainly just kind of dot it in. You can have as much fun with it as you want, putting little bits on the edges in through here. It'll show up really bright on those lighter or whiter areas. So I'm going to be putting some over here on the left-hand side of this tree, and I'm not going to put, you could put, I suppose, a little bit on that right-hand side, but for me, the left-hand side of these trees is going to work. And then this little guy here, he can kind of get it on the, you know, both sides because he's almost directly behind the tree. So just a little bit here and a little bit there. And I'm not doing much, just giving the information that there is in fact this beautiful glow that is happening from the setting sun. Maybe a little bit goes on in through here, maybe put a little bit on these trees over here. Right now I'm just using orange. Again, you could certainly use your yellow too, but the orange is visually working for me, so I'm just rolling with that. And then maybe a little bit on these guys in through here because they are really close, are facing that area. And then once you've got as much glow on here as you want, and it is everything that you had hoped it would be, we have one tiny little step left, and that's going to be with our small brush. So you can just put this large brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so we are on to the final step. This is the final step of every painting, which is to sign it. So I usually sign mine in the bottom left or the bottom right. I think I'm going bottom right on this one, small brush. I'm going to be using black paint. I sign mine with my initials, but you can certainly sign yours with your first name or the date or a symbol or whatever you want for your identifying mark to be is totally fine. And that is going to conclude this painting. I hope you enjoyed the process. I hope you painted yourself a beautiful sunsetting winter scene, and I look forward to painting and sipping with you again sometime.